Hey YouTube, what's up? OV0 here, and today I want to talk about a full frame lens for Sony cameras. I recently purchased a Sony A7 III camera when it came out on launch day. Took a few days to get it from B&H. It was a long wait, but it was definitely worth it. I came from a Nikon D750, which I really did like a lot as well. It was a great camera. I'm equally impressed with the A7 III. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of details about the camera itself and my experiences with that, because there are just plenty of videos that you can see talking about this particular camera, which is really good. So today I want to talk about a lens that's been getting a lot of mixed reviews. Some people say, it's decent. Some people say it's not so great. That lens is the FE 50mm 1.8. So you can get this lens for about $250 new, maybe a little bit less used. So when I see reviews, sometimes people say, it works great. A lot of the complaints have to do with the focusing system, saying that it just has trouble tracking, it's constantly hunting. Now, of course, being one of the cheaper lenses in the Sony FE lineup, they had to make some compromises, I suppose. So the motor is, certainly slower than some of the higher-end G Sony lenses. So today I want to do a quick little test. Maybe a series of tests and kind of run the lens through a few paces for you. I'm going to set up sort of an obstacle course so I can focus on different objects, maybe in various lighting conditions here in the media studio itself. I'm going to try and capture directly from the screen itself, out of the camera through the HDMI, so you can get a fairly accurate representation of what I am experiencing. So my experiences so far with the lens have been fairly positive. Sure, it's not a amazing lens per se, but I guess the question is, do you get your money's worth? For the $250, is the outcome acceptable? But if you're just starting out and you kind of need somewhere to begin, maybe this is a good bang for your buck. So without further ado, let's get started testing. Okay, let's begin our first test. I have a few different things set up along the media studio. About 4 objects. I have a pin on the floor. I have a statue of, a little figurine actually, of Steve Jobs. A couple of blue microphones, a Yeti, and also a snowball. And up in the very far corner I have a sensor for the Oculus Rift, which we could use just for some additional focal points and different areas to test. So I'm going to be shooting, and you have to forgive me if the footage is shaky. I'm trying to see what's on the screen from my monitor over here in the room, which is a little small. But let's take a look at some of our settings. I'm going to be shooting right now just in single shooting for the drive mode. For right now I'm going to start off in center, but we'll try some of the other focus areas here as we continue some of our other tests. And just so as you can see what lens we're using, or rather the firmware, let's go into our menus and head down to, if I can find it here guys, hang on a second. So I believe it's in setup near the end. We can see some information about the camera and the lens itself. So I'm going to go into version, and lens is version 0.3, which the last time I checked, that was the latest version available for the firmware. Alright. Okay, so for the test I'm going to go through and I'm going to focus on each one of the objects, maybe do it 2 or 3 times in a row just so you can see consistency, speed, performance, so on and so forth. Right now I'm using back button focus, AFC, continuous autofocus. So like I said, I am doing AFC for continuous autofocus. For this first test, I'm just going to focus once. Once it gets this lock, I'm going to let go, move to the next target. The second test, I will just hold down the button continuously and move across the different objects just to see how it does in that particular scenario as well. Alright, so here we go. This is our pin. This is Steve Jobs. Yeti microphone. Other microphone. And way up here is our Oculus sensor. Alright, let's do that again. Pin. Steve Jobs. Blue microphone 1. Blue microphone 2. And Oculus sensor. Alright. One more time. Okay, so just kind of quickly pushing the back button focus, it locked on, I think, relatively quickly. Let go and proceeded to the next target. I'm going to do that same thing now for a second pass, but I'm going to keep the button held down and just let it focus as it moves across the different targets. Alright, beginning the second test now. Oops. Okay. Like so. Alright, here we go again. Pin. Steve Jobs. Microphones. And our sensor. One last pass right over here. Okay, so as you can see, it jumped a little bit. The motor is a little slower than your standard Sony FE lens, but once it got focus, which I think was decently quick, it kind of kept it, felt pretty reliable, didn't have any problems seeing it hunting endlessly or having any trouble in that particular scenario. So let's do a few other tests. I know we're shooting with center focus right now, but let's try doing wide and see what happens. So let's go in here and we'll change this to wide for our focus area. And before we do this test, I can tell you when I've tried this particular mode, of course it uses the entire frame, I think about 96% coverage or so, and tries to autofocus on different things. So here potentially you might see some issues because it's trying to focus on different things, and because the motor is a little noisy and it's a little slow, its particular weaknesses could be a bit more pronounced, but even so, I don't think it's been that bad. This test will prove that here in a few moments. But if you're really trying to be creative and take a few particular shots, this mode may not be the best unless you're trying to run and gun, and also potentially for video as well. I'll do some video tests here in a few moments as well. So let's do this. I'm going to try just doing a quick lock on, letting go of the button in this particular mode and seeing how it performs using the same targets as I did before. Alright, so you just saw when I tried to lock on the sensor, of course it's trying to pick up different things in the vicinity of the sensor, and it kind of locked onto the wall. That's kind of just a struggle you have in general when you're trying to autofocus and there's different objects. In that case you'd probably be better off kind of specifying the area you want to focus on, but I'll continue to do 2 more passes just so you can see how how this lens is performing. Alright, one more time. And display turned off. Pardon me one moment. Here we go. Okay, I think I was doing the 3rd pass, I believe, so we'll do that now. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to do that same technique again for the fourth test, but I'm going to keep the button held down continuously just to see how it does doing it in this particular method of focusing. Alright. Okay, let's do that a second time. And finally a third time once again. Okay, so as you saw, when there were different objects in the frame, it was having a little trouble just maybe not focusing, but just finding what particular object you wanted to actually focus on. And maybe this is where most people are having some complaints about. But as you saw in the first test, if you specify the area you want to focus on, it does well in that particular situation. So there may be some further tests that need to be done in a focus mode when you're using wide with continuous focus. Seems to have potentially a little bit of a problem, but even still, for the price and what it's done so far, I think it's doing okay. So we're going to try these same tests again in a little bit lower light. I'm going to turn the overhead lights off, and we'll try and repeat some of these just to see how it does in that particular mode. Okay, so I have turned the overhead lights off, and it is very, very dark in here. I only have a LED lamp in the background and sort of a video light that's obstructed by my microphone pointing at me. So we'll see how well it does in this particular situation. I'm going to keep the settings the same, 1/60th to the second for a shutter, aperture at 1.8, ISO, I'll leave on auto for right now. Do the same type of tests. Again, I am shooting in a center focal point for focus points right now. And I'm going to run through the same thing. I'm just going to try and lock focus on a target, move to the next one, letting go of the button after I acquire focus. So let's give this a shot. Our pin. Steve Jobs. Microphone 1, microphone 2, and our sensor, which has some okay light up there at the moment. Alright, so let's do pass number 2. Had trouble with the pin. It's pretty dark down over here in this corner. There we go. Steve Jobs. Microphone 1. Microphone 2. And our sensor. One final pass. You see it had a lot of trouble there. It is very dark in the corner. Not a lot of contrast down there for it to try and lock onto. Microphone, microphone 2, and sensor. Alright, so performed not quite as good as before when we had more light, but it wasn't terrible either. So let's do the same test again. But we're going to do wide for our focus area. And going to do, for this first pass, just try and obtain focus, let go of the focusing, and then move to the next target. So let's give that a shot. Alright, second pass. Microphone and our sensor. Okay, one last time. Oops, we got our other microphone. And the sensor right there. Okay, we'll do that once again. I'm going to keep the button held down the entire time, move across the targets, and we'll see what we get. Go. Alright, let's do another pass. And finally, a third pass. Okay, so similar to what we, I guess the results that we got when we had more light in here. Had a little trouble finding the targets, but once it found them, it appeared to stay on them. I didn't see a lot of difficulties acquiring or staying on focus. I do remember that we forgot to do a test in a center focus and having it just continuously move across targets. So I'm going to do that now just to see how that performs. So first pass, I'm going to keep the button held down here. Again, trying to focus in the center as we go to the different targets. So, alright, do a second pass. And finally a third pass. If I can keep track of where I'm going. And the sensor right up there. Okay, so maybe did a little better when you actually specify where you want to focus versus trying to do a wide focus area. And again, it's really dark in the room right now. It may not be accurately represented in what you're seeing on the screen right now. But as you can see, I think the test went reasonably well. I'll go back and review these here when I go and edit the footage that I captured, and I'll get back to you with some final comments. Okay, so let's do some tests using a video mode just to see how well the focus does. In this case, I'll start off again with center focus, and I'll go across the targets and see how well it does as far as transitioning into focus, how well it keeps focus, or if it has trouble hunting. So let's find that out right now. I'm going to begin, of course, with the first target here on the floor, which was the pin. Alright, and again, bear with me. I am looking on my computer monitor to see where and how it is actually acquiring its focus here. Alright, and our sensor. Let's go back for a second pass here on the floor. Steve Jobs. Alright, one last time. Back on the floor. Steve Jobs. Microphone. Microphone. And our sensor. Okay, so that went reasonably well. Again, we have decent amount of light in here right now. So I'm going to try the same test again. I'm going to shut down the lights and we'll see how well it does. Okay, so let's try the same test again. With the lights turned off, you can see the levels of brightness are about the same as it was when we did our still shot test. So let's do this again. I'm going to come down and I'm going to start with the pin. Let's see how it does. It's a little harder for me to tell if it actually has accurately obtained focus because it's so dark, and I'm trying to see this from the smaller display on my monitor, but it appears from what I can tell that it is getting focus. I'll do a second pass, and again I'll review this as well when I go back to edit some of this footage just to see how it's doing. And of course I would expect for it to have trouble just with some of these particular objects are heavily in the shadow, so there's not a lot of contrast or area for it to actually sort of get a lock on the objects itself. And one final pass. Okay, so that was shooting in center. Okay, so let's try that same test again, but I'm going to put the focus mode on wide, and we'll see what kind of results we get. Alright, we'll start with our pin. We will move over to Steve Jobs. Microphone number 1. Okay, for whatever reason, I think my capture device is starting to not cooperate with me. So I may not be able to finish this particular test right now, but I would sort of anticipate that we'd have results similar to the one we just did. Maybe there'd be a little bit more hunting, but from what I'd gathered so far, I didn't seem to see a lot. Let me plug this in again and see if we can get anything here. Alright, so I'm not going to do the complete test, but let's just see if we can sort of get a representation here by going from two distances that are far and close. Just to see how well it focuses, or if it is hunting. Okay. I don't know why for this particular test my capture device was freaking out when I was making some movements, but as you can see, it appears to be locking on fairly decently without just hunting continuously. Alright, so I'm not going to press my luck with my capture device, but it seemed to be doing okay. I'm going to review some of this footage, we'll go back and look at it. Definitely leave me some of your comments about what you think this lens is doing, if it's performing decently enough to be worth the asking price of about $250 or less, depending if you buy it new. So I look forward to hearing some of your thoughts, and I will see you next time. Okay, so that concludes some of our testing for today. I have not reviewed the footage yet. I will do that as I edit the video and make some additional comments as we watch it. So far my experience was, I think that it held up pretty well. Certainly for the asking price of $250, it's probably a decent value to at least get you started until you can afford a higher end lens. Okay, so let's take a look at the footage when it's done. Certainly leave me your comments. I appreciate all of your opinions. And certainly I don't do product reviews very often, so hopefully this video wasn't too disjointed. I don't have a lot of time right now to make it very well polished. But certainly if you like this kind of content, if you want to subscribe, like, that would be awesome. And I will see you next time. Thanks.